Tisa Torah portion is very rich as it continues to tell us about the construction of the tabernacle. And Bezalel is appointed as the chief artist. And with great skill and wisdom, he designs and made the sacred vessels for the tabernacle. The portion starts with a command to take a population census, a necessary step in creating national order and proper administration. This week, we read again about the importance of keeping the Shabbat. This commandment is mentioned already in the story of the creation at the beginning of Genesis. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. During the beginning of the Exodus, when the children of Israel just went out of Egypt, they learned about the Shabbat from the heavenly bread of manna, as God tells them to collect the manna during the week, but there will not be manna on the Shabbat. Then again, keeping the Shabbat appears in the Ten Commandments. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day it is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. And in our Torah portion, the Shabbat will become a symbol, a sign of the eternal covenant between the people of Israel and God. Say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths. There will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. The Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for the generations to come as a lasting covenant. Keeping the Shabbat is one of the most important commandments. That is why Jewish literature is full of discussions and ruling about the Shabbat. The Shabbat is frequently mentioned in the New Testament as well, sometimes giving us a different perspective on the seventh day. It is good for us to know that there are different rulings about the Shabbat given by rabbinical schools of Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, who differ from each other in their approach to the commandments, with Hillel being open and tolerant, and Shammai stricter and more legalistic. Bet Shammai did not take into account the people's ability to follow the rulings, while Hillel tried not to overload people without a good reason. And what was Yeshua's position? Yeshua in the New Testament will often combine the two. When looking at ourselves and our relationship with God, we better be strict and uncompromising. However, towards others, we should be understanding and give them the benefit of the doubt. As an example, let's look at Yeshua's famous saying, "And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but you do not consider the plank in your own eye?" Yeshua compares the shortcomings of one person with the similar shortcomings of his friend. And according to this saying of Yeshua, we should look at problems, our own issues, as a big plank in the eye that stand out. But the shortcomings of others must look to us as small and thin as a speck. Yeshua teaches us to be strict towards ourselves, but forgiving and understanding towards others. Now, back to the Shabbat ruling in the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 12, Yeshua is asked the following question: is it allowed to heal on the Sabbath? This question comes as a test. What will Yeshua say? What will his answer be? According to Yeshua, there is a list of priorities, and people come before the Shabbat because the Shabbat is given to man, and not that man was created in order to keep or to observe the Shabbat. So according to Yeshua, people are more important than the Shabbat. And if we can help or heal a person on the Shabbat, we should do it. And that is why Yeshua is healing people on the Shabbat, contrary to the view of some of the sages in his days. This example seems to support the view that the Pharisees and Yeshua are opposites, or even better enemies. But this view is incorrect and even wrong. Among the different groups of Judaism, the Pharisees were the closest to Yeshua. And because they were very close, Yeshua is criticizing them the most, as he has greater expectations from them. Apostle Paul even testifies about himself in Acts chapter 23 that he is a Pharisee from the Pharisees. But when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, "Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Concerning the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am being judged." Paul doesn't say, "I was," but "I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee." When we read the New Testament, we see that Yeshua is very close with the Pharisees. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. Even more so, Yeshua commands his disciples to obey the rabbinical rulings, but then immediately he criticizes them in the most harsh way, as we see it in Matthew 23. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach." In this saying, Yeshua acknowledges the right of the scribes and the Pharisees to interpret the Torah and to make legal halachic rulings for the entire Jewish nation, including Yeshua's disciples. But after establishing the status of the sages, Yeshua accuses them of chasing after honor and power, accuses them of hypocrisy when they do not obey the Torah themselves. They talk, but they do not follow. The obvious tension between Yeshua and the Pharisees in the New Testament is based on a deep internal disagreement of someone who comes from within in order to fix and repair, not as an enemy who comes to destroy. In a similar way to the prophets, as they are filled with criticism towards Israel leadership and people. The people of Israel did not like it and were often hostile towards the prophets and their efforts. However, in the aftermath, we know that the prophets wanted the best for their people. We must see and understand the words of Yeshua in the same way. Is there anyone who thinks that the Pharisees in the days of Yeshua were more hypocrites, more corrupt, or loved power and authority more than other religious leaders in Judaism or Christianity throughout history? The answer must be no. You can't find a group of people through history, including all kinds of Christian denominations and all kinds of sects in Judaism that is entirely pure and incorruptible. And I consider the Messianic Jews as a group within Judaism. And most likely, Yeshua would be critical towards us today, and his criticism could be much harsher. The Pharisees were considered the most faithful and dedicated to Torah group of people. And because of that, they were under a magnifying glass. And Yeshua's criticism was focused on them. Are we as a nation free from criticism? Of course not. The central and most difficult story in our Torah portion is the making of the golden calf and the stone tablets of the covenant broken by Moses. The golden calf became an international symbol of sin and rebellion against God, almost in the same way as the apple from the Garden of Eden. What did actually happen there? Moses ascended to Mount Sinai for 40 days, a month and a half. There was no sign and no message from him. The Israelites began to ask, what happened to Moses? It is easy for us to judge the children of Israel, to ask, how could they? I'm not trying to justify their sin, but 40 days have passed, and their leader, who went up to meet with God, is not coming back. It is written that Moses was delayed. They are probably asking themselves what to do. Moses is gone. He did not come back. What shall we do now? Shall we get up and go? Shall we continue our journey or wait longer? How long should we wait? Another week? Another month? A year? The children of Israel sinned. They build a new god. They build the golden calf. Their actions cut short the meeting between Moses and God. And God is sending Moses down from the mountain because the people have sinned and become corrupted. As a result of this sin, God wanted to destroy the nation, destroy Israel, and to start a new nation from Moses. But Moses, similar to Abraham, stands before God and he says to him, you took this nation from Egypt with your mighty hand and outstretched arm, with glory, so that all will see and all will know that there is only one God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But if you will destroy these people in the wilderness, what will the other nations think? That you took Israel out of slavery only to destroy them in the wilderness? Moses goes on, asking the Lord to spare the people, even if it's not for their own sake, then for the sake of their fathers, for the sake of the promise given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Moses succeeds in convincing God. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. This is an incredibly powerful verse in the Torah. I don't think we are able to comprehend the greatness of the situation. The Torah calls us, humans, flesh and blood, to have a dialogue with God. The Torah tells us that we have the power and the ability to change and to fix the world. We can talk to God and even change his mind. And before you say that this right was given to Moses alone, I will tell you that there are other examples in the Bible when fasting and prayer appeased God. In the book of Jonah, we read that when the people of Nineveh announced fasting and repentance, God changed his mind and spared the city. Nineveh wasn't destroyed as the Lord initially intended. One of Yeshua's parables in the New Testament speaks of the widow and the judge. It appears in Luke chapter 18. In this parable, Yeshua tells us about a poor and lonely widow who was mistreated. In order to get justice, she turns to the judge, asking him for help over and over again. At the beginning, the judge turns her away. Her story does not touch him. He does not feel compassion or care about her justice. But eventually, even that judge broke. He took the case and granted justice to the widow. What caused the judge to do it? It was not pity or mercy, neither was it fear of God. The judge from Yeshua's parable admits that the only thing that caused him to get justice for the poor widow is her persistency. It was her non-stop pleading and asking, her endless requests. The judge understood that if he wanted her to stop and to leave him alone, he better take care of her case. Otherwise, she would keep coming back every day, asking for justice. It was easier for him to take care of her case and to be free of her. The judge got tired of that old nag. Yeshua is teaching us through this parable that when we are consistent in our prayers, we will eventually receive the answer. If that judge answered that widow, how much more will the Lord answer those asking him? To be consistent in our prayer means to continue praying, to plead with God, and to not stop till we get the answer. As it is written in the beginning of the parable, a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. Isaiah writes, "For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not remain quiet. Till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. And then I have posted watchmen on your walls, Jerusalem. They will never be silent, day or night. You who call on the Lord, give yourselves no rest." These verses tell us to always pray for Jerusalem, to always speak of Jerusalem, till her righteousness and her salvation will be seen to all. This is our job as believers. God's faithful who pray to him are the guards on the walls of Jerusalem. And they, or us, cannot be silent. Not by day, nor by night. There are two important points here. One, towards God. We have to be persistent in our prayers. Do not give him rest. Remind him of his promises and his prophecies about the salvation of Israel and Jerusalem. The second point is our obligation to break down the circle of lies that are spread about Israel and to spread the truth instead, that justice and righteousness is on our side. While acting on both of those points, we need to be persistent, to pray over and over again, to not stop, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. We learn this from Yeshua's parable and teaching. A parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up. Shabbat Shalom.